Here is a number that might surprise you. Researchers have found that the average person has over 6,000 thoughts per day. 6,000. And yet, how many of those thoughts are just one loop, wanting something to be different than it is? The Buddha identified this pattern 2,500 years ago and gave it a name. He said craving, not circumstance, is the hidden source of suffering. But here is what almost no one realizes. The word he used, the label we translate as craving, is not the thing itself. Today I want to show you exactly what he meant, and why that single distinction could quietly change everything. About 2,500 years ago, in the outskirts of Varanasi in northern India, there was a forest called the Deer Park. Deer grazed quietly there. A river breeze moved gently through the leaves. The soil carried that particular smell of earth at the end of a warm day. Evening was coming. The western sky had begun to turn orange, and light slanted through the trees in long, soft shafts. Deep in that forest, 5 monks sat together. They had been there for a while, waiting perhaps, or simply holding something they couldn't quite name. No one was speaking. Somewhere in the distance, a deer moved through the undergrowth, and then quietly, someone walked toward them. He had walked a long way. The soles of his feet were dusty. He carried nothing except himself. And yet those who saw him that evening would later say that something else seemed to arrive with him, something that made the air feel different, the way it does before rain. His name was Gautama Siddhartha, the man who would later be called the Buddha, the Awakened One. These 5 monks had once been his companions in practice. They had sat beside him through years of severe asceticism, fasting until their ribs showed, enduring hardship they believed would lead to liberation. But when Gautama accepted a bowl of milk rice from a village girl and turned away from that path of self-torture, they felt betrayed. He has fallen, they said to one another, and they left him. Now years had passed. Gautama had continued alone, and sitting beneath a fig tree, he had entered a stillness so deep that something in him cracked open. He described it as waking up. And after that awakening, the first place he came was here, back to them. When the 5 monks saw him approaching from a distance, they exchanged glances. "Let's not stand up," one said quietly. "We don't need to greet him. He's not one of us anymore." But something strange happened as he drew closer. One monk found himself rising to his feet before he'd decided to. Another moved to bring water. A third began arranging a place to sit. Their bodies acted before their minds could stop them. When Gautama sat down, the 5 naturally gathered around him, not because anyone had decided it, but because that's simply what happened. After a brief silence, one of them spoke. "Gautama, have you found something?" He answered quietly, "Please don't call me Gautama. I am one who has woken up, and I have something I'd like to tell you." They were skeptical. What could a man who had abandoned their path possibly have to say? Still, they listened. He began slowly. "Why do you think people suffer?" No one answered. "Because of illness," he continued. "Because of aging. Because of losing the ones we love. Because what we want doesn't come to us. You might think that's why." He paused. "But those are the shapes of suffering. They are not the cause. Suffering has a cause. It doesn't rise up from nowhere. Something is generating it." Among the 5, there was a man named Kandana, the one who had been most critical of Gautama, the one who had urged the others to leave. He spoke quietly now. "What is the cause?" Gautama waited a moment before answering. "Thirst," he said. "The way a parched traveler craves water. We are always craving something. We crave pleasure. We crave security. We crave the feeling that we will go on forever. That craving is what plants the seed of suffering." Kandana said nothing, but something in his eyes began to shift. Gautama went on, speaking of 4 truths he had seen clearly: that suffering exists, that suffering has a cause, that this cause can be understood, and that there is a path toward that understanding. By the time he finished, night had fully arrived. Kandana was crying, not loudly, just quietly, with tears moving down his face. "Everything that arises, changes, and passes, it has a cause. I can see that now." Gautama nodded, gently. The deer park was still that night. Somewhere far off, a deer called out once into the dark. And in that moment, Kandana's name was changed, not by anyone's command, but by what he had become. He would be remembered as Anya Kandana, Kandana who understands. The other four sat with the weight of that word, understands, the way you might sit with a lamp suddenly lit in a room you had assumed was empty. The heart of what the Buddha said that night can be put simply: suffering has a cause. That might sound obvious, but sit with it for a moment, because it's actually quite profound. When we're in pain, most of us instinctively feel that something is missing. Not enough money, not enough time, no one to love us, a body that isn't well. That's why I'm suffering, we tell ourselves. But the Buddha is pointing somewhere else entirely. The pain, he says, doesn't come from what's missing. It comes from the belief that things should be different from how they are. In Buddhist teaching, the cause of suffering is called samudaya, a word that means arising or accumulation. Suffering doesn't come from one event. It builds from many conditions layering together, and at the center of that layering is what's called craving, a desperate, thirst-like hunger for things to be other than they are. We crave pleasure. We crave permanence. We crave the sense that we, as we know ourselves, will not disappear. That craving quietly cultivates our pain. If you're someone who can't let go of anger, pause here for a moment. Your anger isn't proof that you're an angry person. It's proof that somewhere inside there's a picture of how things should have gone, and reality didn't match it. The anger burns at that gap. Underneath the anger, if you look closely, you'll almost always find a craving. I needed that to be different. Sadness works the same way. If only they were still here. If only I could go back. The longing itself isn't what deepens the sadness. It's the grip of it should have been otherwise that turns the temperature up. Here's something I want to ask you directly. Have you ever told yourself, I'm suffering because I'm weak? Buddhism doesn't see it that way. Suffering is not a character flaw. It has a structure. There is a thirst. That thirst meets certain conditions, and pain takes shape from that meeting. When you can see that sequence, even dimly, something in your relationship to the pain begins to shift. And importantly, this isn't about escaping pain. The Buddha didn't tell those 5 monks to get rid of their suffering. He asked them first to look at it directly, to acknowledge, yes, this is here. As long as we treat our suffering as something that should not exist, it doubles. The pain of being in pain, the shame of struggling, piles on top of the original wound. But when you can say, this suffering has a cause, something opens. Your suffering is not your punishment. It is not evidence of your weakness. It is what occurs when certain conditions come together. And if there is a cause, the cause can be seen. That is the deepest thing the Buddha was trying to say that night. One more thing, and this one goes a little deeper. Who is the I that is suffering? We say, I am in pain, but what is this I? Is it the body, the feelings, the memories? Buddhism suggests that what we call I is actually a temporary gathering of conditions, arising right now, in this moment. There is no fixed, permanent self, standing apart from experience, being struck by pain. Rather, conditions gather, and what we call I appears. And in those same conditions, suffering appears too. This is not a way of saying, I don't matter. It's a way of saying the heavy, solid mass of the me who is suffering might be a little lighter than it seems. The pain might be a little less personal than it feels. Think of it this way. A wave doesn't suffer because it is a wave. It only suffers if it believes it must remain a wave forever, separate from the ocean. When the wave sees what it actually is, the grip loosens. Not the water, just the shape it had mistaken for itself. So, where does this teaching live in our daily lives today? Let's look at 3 moments together. The first is at work. Imagine someone who has given years to the same job. They work hard, genuinely hard, but they're passed over for promotion while someone more junior moves ahead. They bring it to their manager and aren't really heard. Why is this only happening to me? The question circles and circles. Sleep becomes difficult. The weeks start to blur. If we look at this through what the Buddha taught, what do we find beneath the pain? A quiet, burning belief. Hard work should be rewarded. I deserve to be recognized. The suffering isn't only in being overlooked. It's in the friction between a fixed expectation and a reality that won't comply. This isn't a reason to stop trying. It's not a call to give up hope. But when you can see where the pain is actually coming from, when you can say, This isn't proof I failed. It's a condition that didn't go the way I needed. There's sometimes a little room to breathe again. The relentless self-blame loses just a bit of its grip. The second is in a family. Many parents carry a quiet anguish that their child isn't becoming who they hoped. Not studying, always on their phone, pushing back against everything. Nothing seems to land. Where did I go wrong? The question lives in the small hours of the night. Try asking this: how much of the suffering is being made by the belief that my child should be turning out differently? A child doesn't come into the world to fulfill a parent's vision. They arrive as their own gathering of conditions, their own temperament, their own era, their own path, and so does the parent. Neither of them was born with a blueprint of who they were supposed to become. When a parent notices that craving, the craving for things to be otherwise, something can shift. The need to control softens, and in that softening, there can come a moment of simply being present with this person, as they actually are. The third is for anyone sitting inside grief right now. Maybe you've lost someone, maybe a long relationship ended, maybe a friendship quietly dissolved. In the middle of grief, we often ask, when will this end? And when it doesn't end quickly, we suffer about the suffering, wondering if something is wrong with us for still being in pain. The Buddha's first words at the deer park were, "There is suffering." Not, "There shouldn't be." Not, "Get past it." He said it plainly, as a fact. Grief is not something to escape or be ashamed of. You love deeply, so the loss cuts deep. You were truly connected, so the separation truly hurts. The grief and the love come from the same place. Before trying to end the sadness, try simply asking, where is this coming from? That one question, asked quietly, without needing an answer, can change your relationship to what you're carrying. And sometimes, just asking it is enough to stop fighting yourself for a moment. A woman once told me that she'd spent 2 years trying to get over her mother's death, reading books, staying busy, willing herself forward. Then one evening she sat down, asked nothing except, "Where does this pain live?" and simply wept. She said it was the first time since the funeral that she hadn't felt alone inside it. Here's one small thing you might try, starting tonight. The Buddha's first step at the deer park wasn't a technique or a solution. It was an invitation to look, to stop turning away, to say simply, "I am in pain right now." Not to fix it, just to see it. If something is weighing on you tonight, try asking yourself once, what is this pain thirsting for? You don't need to find an answer. You might notice a thought like, "This should have been different," or "They should have known better," or "I should be further along than this," or nothing might come. Both are fine. Just the asking is enough. This is close to what the Buddha called right seeing, looking at experience without distorting it in your favor and without turning it against yourself. Just what is actually here. If it helps to make it concrete, tonight before you sleep, take 3 minutes and write one line in a notebook. It can be as simple as, "I was frustrated by this. This made me sad. I felt overlooked today." Then look at that one line and ask gently, what was I craving that made this hurt? Don't force an answer. Just sit with the question. I can't promise this will change everything, but over time, the shape of your suffering may become a little clearer. And when you can see the shape, when you're the one observing the pain, rather than being swallowed by it, something quietly different begins to be possible. That might be the door the Buddha was pointing to. A monk I once read about kept such a notebook for 30 years, not out of discipline, but because he said he was tired of meeting the same grief as if for the first time. By the end, he could recognize his suffering the way you recognize an old neighbor's footsteps on the stair. Not with warmth exactly, but without alarm. That kind of familiarity is itself a form of freedom. Before we close, I'd like to leave you with one question. With the thing that's hurting you most right now, if you looked at the very bottom of that pain, is there a voice that says, "This should have been different"? If so, when did you first decide that? Who taught you that was how it should be? You don't need to answer right now. Just let the question stay with you for a little while. A monk I once knew carried a stone in his pocket for 30 years, not as a reminder of suffering, but because the day he picked it up was the day he finally stopped arguing with the river that had washed away his home. He never explained it to anyone. He just knew what the stone knew. To truly understand why suffering has a cause, we first need to sit with what suffering actually is, and we explored that quietly in a previous teaching. You'll find the link waiting for you in the description below. On that night in the deer park, Kandana's tears weren't tears of relief. He hadn't been rescued. Something had become visible to him. The suffering he had carried for so long, it had a cause. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't proof of his weakness. It was something that arose from conditions. And what arises from conditions can be seen. That shift in seeing, that's what moved him to tears. The suffering didn't disappear. The world still held aging, illness, and loss. The Buddha never denied that. His very first words that night were, "There is suffering." He said it as a fact, not a problem to be solved. But the relationship to suffering changed. Instead of being consumed by it, there was now a way of seeing it. That was what happened in the deer park that night. If you're in pain right now, I'd like to pass along what the Buddha said to those 5 monks. Your suffering doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It has a cause, and what has a cause can be seen. Seeing it is not the same as curing it, but when we see something clearly, something does shift. Always. Thank you for staying with this until the end. That means something. May the shape of your pain gradually become visible to you, and may that visibility bring you a little more room to breathe. A woman once told me she didn't want her grief to go away. She just wanted to stop being afraid of it. That's the room the Buddha was pointing to. Not a room without pain, but one with a window. Whose face came to mind while you were listening today? One story a day. In a week, your words will change. In a month, your eyes will change. In a year, the same world will look completely different.